This is lab presentation 4. We're starting now with the female reproductive system and with figure 51.1 on page 394. And again, just as a reminder, you should have at this point already labeled and already looked at the assigned figures for this lab exercise. So let's take a look at 51.1 again on page 394. And we'll begin with the ovaries. So go ahead and find an ovary which is labeled for you. And notice this is number 7 on the figure and labeled on your right. Be aware there are 2 ovaries and only one is labeled here. You can just glance over and see the unlabeled one on the other side of the figure. Let's look next then at the structures called fimbriae, and you'll recall these, and you'll recall a lot of this information most likely from the Miracle of Life video that you watched. So again, fimbriae number 5, and here we're looking at the label up at the very top part of the diagram. And you'll recall from the video then that the fimbriae are these fringe-like extensions of the ovary. Let's next then, labeled on the left, find a uterine tube. And I would like you to jot down a couple of other names for these tubes. So fallopian tubes is another term, and fallopian then, F-A-L-L-O-P-I-A-N. So the uterine tubes, also called the fallopian tubes. And then also known as oviducts. So O-V-I-D-U-C-T, a pair of oviducts, and literally then ovi for egg, and of course duct for a tube. So oviducts, egg tubes, or fallopian tubes, or uterine tubes. So I'd like you now to follow a uterine tube on down to the uterus, and the uterus then structure number 8 on your figure, and labeled kind of at the bottom center and located at the bottom center part of the figure. Let's take a look now at these various paired ligaments that hold the reproductive organs in place. And let's start upper left with a pair of suspensory ligaments, number 1. And as you can see then, each of these suspends an ovary. There's an ovary that appears like it's kind of hanging down from each one of these suspensory ligaments. Let's take a look now at the ovarian ligaments. And again, the one that's labeled is on the left side of your diagram. So find that ovarian ligament, number 3. And note then that these ovarian ligaments connect, in each case, an ovary to the uterus. Next then we have a pair of round ligaments, so again one on each side. The label here, number 4, lower left-hand part of the diagram. And notice then that these round ligaments come in from the side and help to hold the uterus in place. And then finally, a pair of broad ligaments, number 6 on your figure, labeled here on the right side of the figure. And as you can see then, each of these broad ligaments attaches to an ovary. So go ahead and find that connection, the broad ligament to an ovary. And then also connects to a uterine tube. And shown better on the left-hand side of the diagram, also connects to the uterus. So again, the broad ligaments, very large, very thin, and again, attaching the ovaries and uterine tubes and the uterus kind of together and holding them all in place. Let's go down below now to figure 51.2. And notice then this is a sagittal section of the female reproductive system. Let's again start with an ovary. So upper left, number 2, follow the line in and find the ovary. Here again, notice upper right-hand corner now with the lines coming down. We have the fimbriae, again, those fringe-like projections from the proximal end of an oviduct. The oviduct itself then, or uterine tube, or fallopian tube, so that one that's labeled uterine tube, number 1, make sure you're finding that structure. And this in turn leads to, these paired uterine tubes lead to the uterus. The uterus then labeled for you, number 3, off to the left. And you can't really see the connection here, but again, each of the fallopian tubes would be leading, each of the uterine tubes would be leading to the uterus. If you look off to the right-hand part of the diagram now, and notice just underneath the fimbriae that we talked about, so just under number 8, we're looking now at the 3 different layers of the uterus. And as you can see, these are labeled for you. So go ahead, first of all, and find the endometrium. Follow the line. And as you can see then, endo implies this is the inner lining of the uterus, the inner portion of the uterus. Moving towards the outer part of the uterus now, next to this middle layer, the myometrium. And you can see it's very thick. By the way, you don't have to write down all of these things that I'm saying, just kind of notice. So again, the myometrium, as you can see, is fairly thick. And of course, the myo implies muscle. So the myometrium, this thick layer of muscle. And then finally at the surface, we have the thin perimetrium. And of course, the peri implies that it's a covering, that it goes around the rest of the structure, the rest of the uterus. So find now the cervix, number 9. And here you might want to jot down in your notes that the cervix is the lower third. The cervix is the lower third of the uterus. And note then that the line from number 9 goes to the cervical orifice, or the cervical opening. This opening then opens into the vagina, so number 10 labeled on the lower right. And And if you now follow the vagina on down, you'll see also labeled for you, lower left, number 7, the vaginal orifice. Again, orifice implies an opening, and so the vaginal orifice then, the opening to the outside of the body. We also have various external reproductive organs being shown. And so lower left, go ahead first of all and find a labium majus, number 6, a labium majus. And the literal translation here would be a large lip. Then go ahead and take a look at number 5, a labium minus. And so the translation, a small lip. And then the clitoris, number 4. Note the location, and we'll see these structures again in the next figure. Let's go to that figure then. So figure 51.3. And notice now we have, first of all, the vaginal orifice, which we just talked about, so that opening to the vagina or from the vagina. Go ahead now and find a labium majus labeled for you. And again, notice this is a larger lip-like structure. And I would like you to know the plural, because we tend to talk about these as a pair. So just jot down then the plural of labium majus is labia, L-A-B-I-A, majora, M-A-J-O-R-A. Take a look next then at number 6, a labium minus, and again a smaller lip-like structure. And here again, if you would jot down the plural, and so labia, again L-A-B-I-A, literally implying lip-like structures, and then minora, M-I-N-O-R-A. So we would talk about one labium minus or a pair of labia minora, and we would talk about one labium majus or a pair of labia majora. And then finally, find the clitoris, number 1, label in the upper left, and note the location of the clitoris then up between a portion of the labia minora. We'll pick it up with the next presentation, and we'll start with figure 51.3 at that point.